Hey everybody, welcome back to the Woodruff cast. I'm Frederick and my last name is Woodruff, so that's what's going down. Usually my guests are astrologers or folks working with the tarot, metaphysical mavens. Today I have another sort of maven. I'm not going to use the word expert because I am banning that from my lexicon. But my guest today, Holly Howard, is the founder of both Ask Holly, which is a consulting practice for creative entrepreneurs, and her new venture, Pyramid. And this is fascinating to me because this venture of hers is an AI powered strategic engine for the entrepreneurial economy. It's a bit of a mouthful, but as you hear Holly break that down in our discussion, I think you'll be as fascinated as I am and was with the potentiality of this particular engine, we'll call it. Holly has had a fascinating career trajectory. She's worked as a ballet dancer, a music therapist, a restaurant VP, a medical researcher, and she has taught entrepreneurship at Pratt. And she is convinced that how you build a business is inseparable from who you are. Now, that seems like a no-brainer, but you would be surprised how many people are disconnected from their essence and what they're trying to put out and build in the world. So please help me welcome my guest today on Woodruff, Holly Howard. I just
Yeah.
remember you making an impression on me because you'd already stepped out of social media in a
Okay.
major way. And
Yeah.
then that was what you were forging was creative people can do this without social media. And then how I
Yeah.
think helping people reorient to this non-social media entrepreneurship. Is that an accurate way of describing that, would you say?
Yeah, it's definitely part of what I do for sure. Yeah. Um, yeah.
So, with that in mind, give me and the listener, like, who would be coming to work with you and what are they generally looking to do? Let's like look at that at the start here.
Yeah. It's an interesting question. It's making me think about two things. One, there's the surface level, right? The like, who are they and what are they looking to do? From a surface level, I could be like, well, they're looking to grow their business, right? Their creative business, their creative practice, their whatever, their
Right.
entrepreneurial pursuit. That is certainly like the like surface level. But I think that if you dig below the surface and specifically why people come to work with me is because they want to do it in a way that aligns with their integrity, right? In a way where even on my consulting website, I say like that they don't have to sacrifice their souls to create a business. And
Yes.
I think that that's really specific to how I teach people about business growth.
And that's, I think, such a key point to highlight about integrity because, especially over the last 5 years, I experienced the internet as no integrity. People just, the grift, just, it's almost like since Trump got elected, it opened this Pandora's box on, well, the president's a criminal. We might as well all, just be fucking everybody over. So I just think it's so intimidating for folks that are at this point in their life or someone that's more mature down the road looking to enter the business world, enter the interconnected interconnectivity that the internet is just a symbol of, because before that was the internet, there was networks of
Sure.
people that connected and things like that. So in the midst of this kind of very weird collapse that I see, and we've talked about this when I was on your podcast, Pluto and Aquarius, and Aquarius really being the quintessential sign of social Aquarius, and then media Aquarius. And then here's Pluto coming along, the destroyer. So all of that is getting leveled out. Where does that leave us all now? With the, even though social media is still there, it's still pulsating. What's your take on where that leaves us all now?
I think that it leaves us, well, I'll just go back a little bit and say, as you were explaining all of that and, bringing up Trump, and I do think that there's something to that, right? Um, I remember Chris Rock had this special, and this was back in the 90s, and he was talking about, I think it was the mayor of DC at the time, who had been, maybe it was like caught on camera, smoking crack. And Chris Rock, I don't know if you remember this scandal from the 90s, but
Loved
Chris
it.
Rock's joke at the time was about like, what do you do? How do you tell a child, like, don't do drugs, you're not going to turn into anything. And the child then can be like, I can be mayor, like, and I think about that joke a lot, right? And I think this is the energy that you're connecting, right? When you're like,
Yes.
don't be a crook, you won't get anywhere in life. And it's like, no, you could be president, like you could, and then especially that, and all of the Epstein files and everything that's coming out. And somebody I heard on a podcast say there's the Epstein class and then there's everyone else. And I was like, oh, that's also interesting, right? Like that's an interesting way. So to tie this back to this idea of like what happens is social media, you know, starts to, which I think has been unraveling for a long time. And where does everyone go? And it's interesting because we don't go backwards, right? Like we're not going backwards to the
Mhm.
like Luddite days. Like I don't use social media, but I'm not like blind to the fact that like technology isn't going away. That's not necessarily it. But I do just wonder if it's going to help people wake up to their needs a little bit more. Like, why were you on that in the first place? Like, what were you trying to fill
Right.
from that? And where might you fill that otherwise? I think the reason it was so easy for me to leave social media, I was just saying this to somebody yesterday, is like, I cannot even keep up with the relationships in my inners, in my circle, in my life, in
Totally.
all of my family, in all of my husband's family, in my colleagues, in my all of my neighbors here in my building. Like I can't even keep up, let alone like have the time to then go out and do that. And so maybe it is a reflection of like how do people actually want to connect? How
Mhm.
do, what were they getting from that? Like a lot of the people in my orbit put their work on social media, right? So they use it to get validation and feed, like, I would just say more validation, but like, what are other outlets, like other ways that you can get that validation?
I think that's the big question for people because they've been inculcated so much into internet living and social media, and then to be confronted with, well, that option is kind of closing down now. And then at the same time, their social skills have atrophied because everyone's, been texting or on social media or just not leaving the house and on their screen or phone for 6 hours a day. So I think there's a bit of a shock doctrine at work now. And then people are confronted with AI. Like, okay, I'm going to want to do this with this idea I have, but is a, fucking robot going to be, go ahead.
Well, what I was going to say is what I'm thinking about now is I don't know if you remember this, but like about 20 years ago, there was like the farm to table movement. Do
Oh,
you
yeah.
remember this? and slow food. I think slow food started in Italy and then it kind of spread here,
Hmm.
which in a lot of ways was a going backwards, right? Like it's
Yeah.
like, well, everything was farm to table many, like a century ago. And then we got into processed foods. And then everybody started waking up and saying, no, I want to go back to farm to table, or I want to shop at my farmers markets. So maybe it's thinking about that, like, what is that in the social media realm, right? It's like we don't go back to when there's no, technology, but like,
Hmm.
what's the kind of farm to table? Do people just meet in cafes and, sit with your neighbor and, whatever?
This fascinates me. My Venus is in Gemini, so I'm very interested in how people connect and forge alliances or whatever through connecting. And a couple of the people that I follow that I guess they're trend watchers, you could call it. Um, it's interesting. They're all talking about the same thing now, where privacy is the new cachet, where it's like having no followers on your Instagram and maybe like six or seven of your friends, or it's a private account that, remember, because you can do that on Instagram, have a private account, and then just your little coterie of people come in. And I just thought, oh God, this is such a good sign.
Yeah.
Privacy as cachet, privacy as a luxury brand. I mean, because that's kind of
Yeah.
what it is nowadays, right?
Well, I think that word privacy is really good. I've been thinking about it in the context of watching Love Story on Hulu.
Love
And
that.
yeah, and what's so interesting to me is how private she was, right? Carolyn Bessette, and like how guarded she was about that privacy. And it's so funny that like within 2 decades or a decade and a half, it was like nobody wanted privacy. Everybody, people
Right.
were dying to be photographed and to like photograph themselves in public. And as somebody who came up in that era with Carolyn Bessette, where it really was like privacy was like the thing, it was a weird time for me to be like, why do you want to put all of your life out there? Why do you
Mhm.
want these people invading your life? Like, it's a strange mindset, but I don't know if people were actually like conscious of that, or if it was just so much of the addiction to like needing that validation, needing that constant dopamine hit or feedback loop. I'm not sure, but I love privacy.
Yeah, I think this is, of course, where Warhol was such a prophet, but that, famous line of his is in the future, everyone will be world famous for 15 minutes. That got under the skin of the culture, you could say. And then, the reality TV and then the internet and then social media. And people, everything just turned upside down, where
Yeah.
privacy was the price of social media, was the obliteration of privacy. And it's so funny and ironic because the thing was always like, say, from Zuckerberg, well, it's all about connecting with people and forging, and like you're saying, I can barely manage the six relationships in my life.
Yes.
So I think all of that fake connecting and fake friends and followers and likes and all that, I think it just pushed people towards a kind of psychosis, really, but not really, but definitely an erotic orientation to the social sphere. With your clients and people that consult with you, how do you finesse them back or encourage them back into, I'll call it re-entry, like into reality,
Humanity.
right?
Yeah. Well, I'll first and foremost say that most people are scared. Like most people that I work with won't step away from social media fully, and they'll say things to me like, "Oh, well, look, I, have so many followers," or "Look, people have inquired about my work because they saw it on social media." And so I just try to help them understand a few things. One, I'm like, that's because that's the only place you're showing up, right? If you're not out in the world, if you are not proactively trying to make connections with people and try like pick up a phone, go visit somebody in person, like if you're not proactively doing that, like, well, then and you're only on social media and treating it like your job, of course, that's where people are finding you, So, like, encouraging people to reconnect. But it is interesting to me how almost resistant people are just to that basic information. Like,
Mhm.
oh, I don't have time, or like, oh, that takes a lot of. I'll tell you the most common is like how much work it takes. That people are like, oh, it takes so much work, right? There's like this mythology that social media is a low lift, even though like people are doing crazy things to like produce content. Like I know you're old enough, I'm old enough to know that like when social media started, even decades ago with like Friendster and MySpace, it just was off the cuff. But now it's like, do you have the right lighting? How are you editing? All of these things. So I just encourage people, I always just say like humanity first, like make a relationship with somebody, like go out and actually like make a relationship with them. But it is hard for people to do.
Right.
The
I
friction.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, because there's friction to it, right? And like we have been, I think, indoctrinated to believe in convenience. We
Right.
worship at the altar of convenience in America,
It, so that is such a good point to illuminate friction. And that has always been part and parcel of our social instinct is, the desire to go out, say, to a club and, meet a guy or a girl. Because I remember those days. And, I
Yeah.
kind of had to, get my courage up and, get to the bar, maybe have a gin and tonic, get lubricated. But that's part and parcel of the excitement, the unknowingness of the other, because
Yeah.
people are mysteries to each other. But social media and the internet made it all seem, here's all their photos, here's their resume, here's their this and it just obliterated the mystery of other human beings and the tension that comes about, getting yourself to go out and, meet people.
Yeah. I love that word mystery. My husband and I talk about that word so much, right? Like to me and watching that love story and remembering that time, it's like we've denigrated mystery, right? We so have denigrated the idea of mystery. It's like we don't respect it at all. And mystery is where the magic is, right? Like who's going to be there? What are they going to be wearing? What do they look like? Like who are these people? And I just think that like I don't think that you can live a rich life with in the absence of mystery. I don't think you
Right.
can. I don't think it's possible, and like we've traded mystery for certainty, and with that, comes a loss. There's such a loss to that.
Right. So just to follow up, and then I want to ask you a little bit more about working with clients. Yeah, just on that note of like you were telling folks, well, they're addicted to social media still. How are people going to find them? Da, 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 da. It's something I've learned from Seth, who runs the Social Media Escape Club. I've talked to you about that before. His thing is so like baseline. He's like, well, just email like 10, 12 people that are in your email list of friends and say, here's, my new art show, or I'm working on this new book, or my band's playing down. Just start like the way we used to always do. Put up a flyer in your neighborhood. It seems corny nowadays, but I really think it's like the longest journey starts with a small first step. And that's a way to re-entry.
Oh yeah, that's what I tell people. Like there are actually so many other things that you can be doing besides social media. But we again, like And what's been interesting to me is why we discredit that, right? Why we're like, oh, put up a flyer. Like, no, like if you want to reach people now, you have to have an Instagram account. It's like, no, go put up a flyer. Like, go put up a flyer, go knock on people's doors. To your point, call them, like it is really just baseline. It's truly just, I'm like, remember that all of these things happened before the phone and social media feeds were invented,
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So okay, we've touched on that. Uh, Share some other secrets you have, like with your approach to working with folks that are maybe apprehensive or still hypnotized by social media, or what are some other things that they come to you as their, paradoxes or challenges that they're uh, trying to solve, and they
Yeah.
want your expertise.
I would say like when we think about really, kind of like taking initiative, or I like to say the phrase like to have agency over what your creative or entrepreneurial path is. I do think it's about having a lot of self-validation. I try to tell people like you have to self-validate a lot. Because I will say this, if somebody comes to me and they're like, I just love making reels. It brings me the most joy I've ever experienced in my life. It is my truest, greatest creative, experience. I'm like,
It is fun. It is
then
fun.
make the reel, right? But I also say like you have to make sure like if you're asking yourself like why is nobody discovering my work or I'm not getting as much, income as I need, then you have to start questioning like who's on the other side of that reel, and am I thinking about like who's really like who am I speaking to, and
Right.
who, is the customer or the client, whatever, for my work, and how do I meet them where they're at. And I think like so to bring it back to this idea of self-validation is like you might have to step out of doing things that like your peers are doing or like that you're seeing everybody else do and do it a different way. And you're going to have to validate that for yourself and not wait for your peers or your industry to say like, yes, Frederick, that's exactly what you should be doing. Because I think social media is kind of brainwashed is an extreme word, but like to thinking that.
Absolutely. It's so, yes. And it's the likes and the clicks and the little hearts. And that's each one of those is like a dopamine validation. And I think that that's a big part of the seduction. The slippery slope that I've noticed happening with all of that shit is now that the consolidation is happening within media into this crazy, like Larry Ellison world, these fuckers, if someone wants to stay on social media, they need to understand that they are basically working as a slave now because they're making the validation so much more slippery. So if people are want to stay on social media, they need to know that's the new contract now in MAGAville is you will be a serf and Larry Ellison will own your ass on, TikTok or whatever.
I don't
But
know who owns TikTok now. I know I think I saw that there was potentially a sale going through or whatnot, but I agree
Larry
with you.
Ellison has it
That
now.
how-
He owns
Oh, he does.
CBS, Paramount. He's going to own CNN. He's got
Yeah.
TikTok. So we've gone through the looking glass into this other weird media world. No.
Yeah.
But that's
I
great.
think,
That's Pluto and Aquarius burning the shit out.
and I was talking to a colleague today and she said something about how she was like, maybe we should just stop. The way she was saying is like, maybe we should stop talking about what we're not going to do. Like, we're not going to use social media and just focus on what we are going to do and just like
Yes.
not even talk about it. It's like not even anymore saying, I'm not going to watch CBS. Like, who cares about CBS? Like it's like
It's
just
yes.
it
Yes,
goes
great.
back to what I was saying about if I just really think about, did I call my mom every day? Have I texted with my brothers? Did I forgot my brother-in-law's birthday it's like when I go through the checklist of everybody I need to check on every day and every week, like I said, I don't even have like it doesn't even cross my mind that I'm missing out on looking at a feed somewhere. Did I
Right.
check on the neighbor down the hall, who's having, health problems? It's like
Yes.
when you really start to think about, I think, all the ways that you can engage and be present in your own life, there's so much, did I notice that the sunsets, comes in a different angle today than it did, 2 weeks ago? Like,
And the other thing I'll add to what you were just saying about, calling somebody, checking in on a neighbor, something with a friend. Again, when I think of pre-internet life, those were how, that's how all of the connections and contacts I made that impacted my career were all from somebody, a friend knew a friend that had a job at the local alternative paper. So I was able to contact them and get a gig, doing music reviews and, you know, and that's always there for us with folks, like the human connections, who knows who.
you know what? I'm just putting these thoughts together and I'm not sure if they work, but I was talking to my husband about like I myself am in kind of a transition. I'm launching a new company. I'm in a transitional period, but it's made me reflect on my life in general. And
Mhm.
what has happened is like, because I felt a lot of pressure in launching this new company to do it a certain way, to do it the way that it's traditionally been done. And I realized like I can't do that. And so I've been reflecting on my life and like just how much magic has happened in my life already. And one example I'll give is I have a very famous photographer took a portrait of me that hangs in a museum, and I have a copy of it. And I was telling my husband, like, that moment happened serendipitously, right? I could have never reached, like, I could have never made that happen, but it
Right.
happened because I was doing this thing and I was in this place and blah, blah, blah. And I think those moments of serendipity, which were much more common, in my opinion, when we were offline, I think this idea of virality, which is totally tied to online, is somehow it's like I think that's why people chase virality, right? It's like you're looking for that moment of serendipity. You're looking for that experience because I think that is a very human experience. It's to your
Yeah.
point, it's like where
Yeah.
your friend's like, "Oh, you should go down to the alternative weekly and talk to so and so," like and I think we've replaced it with this idea of like I think I need to go viral because I think you're looking for that. But like maybe just think more about like I think serendipity has a lot to do with preparation and luck, right? And
Mhm.
preparation, I just mean like, what are you doing with yourself every day? Where are you putting yourself? How are you honing your craft so that when that moment of serendipity happens, that luck, it all comes together, And like maybe just focus on that.
Exactly. I always say that to people ask me about writing. And it's that old bromide about, well, you sit down, you have your keyboard, typewriter, your pad out, and the serendipity is able to find you.
Yeah.
Because like you're saying, you've got yourself primed
Yeah.
for that connection. And I 100% am down for that for sure. Tell me, let's talk about Pyramid, this new venture of yours. And it was so wild when I was going through Substack because I've been on there, fuck, 5 years now. And then there Holly Howard was on Substack on social media.
Yeah.
Well,
I know.
it's social media plus Substack is. But yeah, t talk about Pyramid. What's that about? What's happening? How's it going?
Yeah. And I will say this, like I do write on Substack, but I don't use the feed. So I don't use my Substack feed or like look at my Substack feed. But as a platform to write, I actually like it better than I was writing on MailChimp before. I like the format. I like the way that you can use it. It's much easier.
Totally.
So Pyramid is what I'm calling the strategic engine for the entrepreneurial economy. It's a mouthful, but it's a place, it's an AI powered tool, so we can talk about that. It is AI, but it's
Definitely,
an
I want to hear
AI,
that.
yeah, it's
So
an
go ahead.
AI tool that I have infused with the methodology that I've been using for the last 14 years and to teach business growth about like how do you discover what your values are, how do you discover what your purpose is, and then it helps you once it you takes you through that process understand like, okay, well, what, if those are my values and I need to make $100,000 this year, tell me how to do that, and it helps you figure out how to do that. If I need to make $100,000 and I want to do that without social media, it will tell you based on your purpose and your values all the ways that you can do that without using social media. So that's what I mean by like it's a strategy engine. It helps you understand like how do I actually build and grow my business? And then it's going to do a lot more things, but that's the general idea.
Like it
Yeah.
sounds like you're, if I get it right, you're kind of taking your consciousness and in memories and experience and then
Yeah.
kind of uploading uploading it too, right?
Yeah. Well, and this is where like what's interesting about AI, and I know, there's a lot of feelings and thoughts about AI. There's a lot of issues with AI, but when I was building this product, which isn't public yet, it will be public this fall, um, I had to understand how I wanted to train my AI, right? So like I've trained the AI within Pyramid. It will be built on top of like Claude and Gemini and whatnot, but then you train it specifically. And what's different about Pyramid is like I've trained it in ways that I work myself, right? So like
Hmm.
that people sometimes have a problem with AI because they're like AI is sycophantic, right? We've all heard about this where it's like, Frederick, brilliant idea. You're the only one that can do this in the
Right,
world.
right, right.
You will never get that feedback from Pyramid. Pyramid will never tell you that, right? Like, because that's not helpful to anyone. Now, is it helpful if it can, validate something for you? Yes, but like you can control those aspects of it. And I think that that's really important because people need reinforcement, but they also need questioning. They need synthesis of information. Um, they need the dots connected between things. So that's what I'm excited about.
And what would you say to someone that would go like, well, okay, rather than me utilizing this with you, paying you for access, I'll just go to Claude and, strike up a dialogue inquiry and da 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 da. How would you respond like to that? Like,
So in two ways. One, where I was just saying, like, to enter the onboarding of Pyramid, you have to go through this process of you actually go through defining your purpose, values, and vision. So in Claude, you don't necessarily do that, right? It's not that you couldn't upload what you would consider those things into Claude. You certainly could do that,
right.
but you're not going to get to them in the way that we get to them in Pyramid, which is a really particular methodology, like I said, that I've honed for 14 years. So that's the first thing. The second thing then is even if you were to upload something like that to Claude, the way that Pyramid is going to work is it's going to have the framework of the strategy. It's going to have the capacity then to go into all of those things and say, here, Frederick, then here's what it needs to be.
Hmm.
And again, like it all comes back to the training of the AI itself, where Claude is really trained to give you best practices, right? Like that's the whole thing about AI is it's just generic. It's like why people are like, oh, it's kind of just I get slop. I ask it something, but that's all it's trying to do. It's just trying to predict from this huge data set, right, that it's trained on. Where Pyramid is specifically one going to be trained on your data only, right? Like so whatever I'm putting in as my pyramid, my purpose, values, and vision is different from you, Frederick.
Hmm.
So what the AI is going to tell you is going to be vastly different than what it's going to tell me.
I see. The term as an astrologer, I think the primary inquiry that comes to me from clients is about purpose and the notion that, the astrology chart can be a pointer to purpose for the person. What do you think about that? Like,
I think it's so important. And I'll share, I've already built the prototypes of the purpose and the values modules is what I call them. And I've started sharing them just closed with people. And the feedback that I've gotten has been unbelievable. And what I think is really interesting about it is that, again, it comes back to the way I built the product and I trained the AI. It is not going to make up anything about you. It's going to connect dots for you and like help you see through lines and reflect things back to you. So, like I was talking to somebody about personality tests.
oh
Uh,
yeah.
and I am so anti-personality tests. Like I cannot, and I actually said to them, I was like, I would rather have my chart read than have a personality test given to me, like
Hmm.
because um I especially like the way that you talk about astrology when you're like, it's like the weather system, right? It's like this system where a personality test is very much like Frederick, you are X, Y, and Z.
Yep.
But the thing is like we're just wanting to learn about ourselves. And my philosophy on that is like we can learn about ourselves in the context of astrology and that weather system, or we can also learn about ourselves in the context of just like having things reflected back to us in a way that we maybe haven't seen them before. So it's like, it's almost as if we don't need new information. We just need a moment to have something reflect back to us and ask us about that thing. And that's also different from therapy because, like, traditional therapy, you go, so I'm a trained music therapist, and which means I had to be trained in systems of psychotherapy before I got certified. And in therapy, you go and traditionally they'll just go like, "That's interesting, Frederick." Like, "Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting." But there's not like, and you were trained as a therapist not to give too much information to the person, like
Hmm.
just let them be. So
Hmm.
to me, this is a space where one, these things get reflected back, but what it'll help you do is build a bridge and say, okay, for example, a few months ago, there was a story in the New York Times about this guy, this journalist goes on, he's a copywriter and he starts losing work and he knows it's probably to AI. And
Hmm.
he notices his client base is dwindling. So he goes to ChatGPT and he's like, I need work. What should I do? And ChatGPT is like, okay, he was like somewhere rural. I'll just make it up, like Colorado or something. And so ChatGPT was like, go out and buy a chainsaw. Everybody needs their trees trimmed, like you've got a job. Well, next thing he knows, he's in a lot of pain and he's being offered prescription pain pills, and like he sees people around him in addictions. what where pyramid is vastly different is like extracting way more information from him, like, well, how do you want to spend your day? Like if he's, how do you want to spend your day? What are your, like, let's talk about that in context of you saying like these are your values. Like, what if your values aren't being doing physical labor, or these things, or like wanting to, take pain pills? And so just to go back to like generic information, like sometimes it's not helpful without context. Context is really important.
Absolutely. I just got twanged by this notion. And again, it really fits the astrology right, with Pluto and Aquarius, because Aquarius is the great like information gatherer, and then it turns that into like cultural phenomenon and whatnot, phenomena. But with Pluto and Aquarius, we don't need more information, like you're saying. And it's like that then severs somebody from that hunger because that's when at any time we log on to email, our phone, internet, we're hunting for information. Even if it's just your doctor saying, yes, come see me at 2 a.m., 2 p.m. tomorrow. So that info hunting gathering is being severed now. So what does that do? It's like what you're talking about. It puts it back on what already essentially exists within a person. And hopefully, to the theme of purpose, a person's aligned with that or they're discovering that. when I work with a client, that's how I try to. I would never sit, well, we've worked together, so you know this. Like I would never sit down and say, you should do this, that, you shouldn't do that. It's more like, whoa, it looks like there could be a proclivity for this and this. And then they'd be like, God, I remember when I was a kid, I was really interested in that. But then, my mom said, and so it's reawakening these essential acorns, as I call them, or James Hillman called them.
Two things. When I was building out the product, I started calling it the acorn, right? Like this is the acorn. This is the acorn. And so that's one thing. And then there was something else I was going to say about less information. Oh, going back to, I can't remember if you said this at the beginning of this conversation, but I remember you saying this in one of our other conversations when you were talking about online experts. Everybody's an expert.
Mm.
And my whole philosophy is like, everyone is an expert in their lived experience. That doesn't mean you should go out and be the expert of X, Y, and Z. But based on that lived experience, what expertise is developed that's unique to you? Because I think we actually need more of that, right? More diversification of expertise and less singular experts in the world that people are like addicted to, basically.
The thing about patriarchal systems is the people that get in control, they're just little miniature versions of all of us, but they have the power and the money to go like, oh, I think the world should totally look like this and be all about that. And I have the money and the power, and I'm going to start fashioning the world like this. Think of like Elon Musk or Peter Thiel or one of these freaks. And this is one of the worst qualities of the ego, and especially the male oriented ego, is that, well, it's this caveman kind of way of imparting to the world and then thinking that the whole world should be within this vision that the person has. And fuck that, because we all have our visions for ourselves, but we lose track of it with all this hypnotic draw to these experts and these
Yeah.
power players. Anyway, I didn't
Yeah.
mean to get on a screed there.
It is interesting. And that's what, just to go back to some of the earlier topics we were talking about, I think why leaving social media for people is hard is because it does force you to have your own vision for your own life. And I think like people don't realize that when you're constantly inundated, your psyche is full with other people's experiences, there's not enough room for your own inner life to flourish. And if your own inner life isn't flourishing, it's very hard to hold that against what you're constantly inundated with. And I will say, like, what's interesting, so like I'm in the tech space now, right? I'm trying to raise money for this company. I'm like in these spaces. And it's been an interesting journey for me because I'm like, who do I want involved in this company? Who do I want to take money from in this company? And like so much in this company, people you go out and you look at these websites of people with money and they're like, SpaceX was amazing. And you're like, SpaceX was meant to exist because we weren't going to solve the problem of life on Earth. You know what I mean? But like people are like, yeah, occupy Mars. I'm like, occupy Mars? Like, let's help the people in Appalachia, like
Right, right.
what are you talking about? And yet we like hold these investments up and these companies up as in like as if they have like I don't know, as if they're wise. There's no wisdom. There's no wisdom in so much of what is happening right now.
It's like the divine feminine is completely missing
Yeah.
from the shell of of exterior reality right now. It's like people hypnotized with billionaires and what the stock market's doing this morning and numbers, numbers, numbers. What's number one? That's number two. Oh, that only came in third place. It's all of that where I think the feminine approach is one of vulnerability in the sense
Mhm.
of being open. to the mystery, to the unknown, to the chasm that exists, between, well, here's external reality and here's what hasn't even manifested yet. There's this gap. And I think women and the feminine approach, it's not just with women, but that they're more akin to work with that and be able to finesse that. So I see this as another quality that's starting to come back up online into the culture, but it's really having a hard time now with whatever kind of gains the culture made prior to the orange bloat, where suddenly abortion's not happening and ooh, there's just trad wives and all this shit. So we're in a very strange oscillation period. So with you going out as a woman, dealing with these investors, people interested in the company, how's that like for you? Is it all like the men's world, the boys club game, or is there more latitude now?
My experience, so I should preface this by saying too, like I grew up in a really male dominated environment. And like my dad was one of five boys. I come from a huge Irish Catholic family. Like I have two older brothers, like so I'm very comfortable in the like male dominated spaces. I
Mhm.
do well, but not because I'm like trying to be like that. But those, I don't find those spaces intimidating at all. But what I do find, I use this word with my husband once after coming out of a meeting. I was like, he was like, how was it? And I was like, it was impotent. Like, I was like, it was impotent. Like, there was no like, and to me, what's interesting about that is like there's either the mania of Elon Musk and SpaceX, and we're going to Mars, and you can have shampoo delivered to you within an hour from Amazon Prime. There's like mania, or there's like kind of like impotence, And I'm like, and I wonder to your point, Frederick, like with the feminine. And I don't know where I'm going with this, but like I do think a lot about like women and creativity, right? Like
Mhm.
what is the womb all about? Like childbirth is a creative act, right? Like there's a lot of creativity there. And what I have said about where we're at is I was like, and I think I use the word impotent because I'm like, to me, it's like there's a crisis of imagination, right? Like there's no ability to like create. Like it feels like flat, And it's like it goes from like flat to manic in a lot of like converse like that. Those are the like poles that we're working with. And I right now I find it really interesting. And that's why I had to take a step back and be like, wait, who do I really want to be engaging with? Because like it's not obvious to me yet.
I find that so
Yeah.
like that's disheartening. But I think too, the way we do find the right fit for people in our life is kind of, I talk about this a lot with clients about going the via negativa path where it's like not this, not that, not the, and then it whittles down to then something that is a fit and has the right, resonance. But
Yeah.
often and that's again like your point earlier about this idea about being viral and and exploding and views and all that. It jumps over a lot of the grunt work of the via negativa.
Yeah.
Sure, you do find money in the streets sometimes, right? That happens, but there's a lot of via negativa to work through. Not this, not that, not this, that didn't work, and then you found the right fit.
Yeah. And I don't know, Frederick, you tell me if this relates to astrology, but I think those polarities, what I've realized is like creativity is a messy process, right? And if we're trying to like create, what is this new world that's trying to be created, but people are trying to push us backwards and do all these things. Like, but it's a messy process. And how do we embrace that messiness and feel, I think because people feel a loss of control in the messiness. And that's why I'm like, either they're manic about things or they're just like totally lacking vision.
So we're in a strange gap. People like you and I, though I'm a bit older than you, but we toggle the two worlds. We knew life pre-internet, and
Well,
you know, go
yeah.
ahead.
The thought I was having is like, and when I say impotent, I obviously don't mean that in a sexual way. I just mean like you can feel that and like that there's no energy there, right? And like when do you know who Oliver Sacks was, the doctor?
Love
Yeah, the
them.
writer.
Yeah, great
Yeah.
Cancerian guy.
Yeah. So I did part of the magic in my life was when I was a music therapist and during my internship, it was at Beth Abraham, which is where he had the music for Institute for Music and Neurologic Function. And when he died, or like right before he died, he wrote a series of articles for the New York Times because he had cancer. He knew it was coming. He was able to kind of wrap up his life.
Right,
And there was a phrase that he said in one of those articles, Googleable. He said, I had an intercourse with the world. And I remember just reading that and being like, wow, what? Like, I don't think there's anything else you could ask for, right? To like, and so like, and obviously he's talking about it from like an energetic perspective and the way was able to engage with the world. And I
right.
think that like, somehow, and I don't know how this relates to astrology, but like, and what is it? Intercourse, it's messy. It's all of there's friction to it, like all of these things. And maybe, like how do we get to that? Like that's what I think need to be able to move things forward.
Yeah, but see the koan about what you're saying is that you can't like go to a person and then from the how-to mindset think that they are going to wholesale deliver something for you about your creative life. But what I hear you saying that I resonate with is it's more about just fostering the excitement of creativity
Yeah.
and the notion that forget the specifics, but just the notion of what might what the mystery again. Like what is the unmanifest trying to move through the birth canal of mystery into the manifest world? And if you're excited about that, what your skill sets are, and all that, they'll hop right into that. But if they're doing stuff ass backwards, like trying to listen to somebody to here's what you've got to do. It's like it's just you're short-circuiting that process within yourself, I think. The fun of that and the messiness of it. See, that's the other thing about computers, and I think about Apple when I say this. Everything is so like meticulously clean and sparse and there's not messiness or anything. And I, I don't know any kind of creative work where there's not chaos or messiness in the mix.
Yeah, 100%. And it's like that messiness is it's somatic, it's visceral. I don't care what type of creative you are, whether you're a writer, whether you're an artist, whether you're, a performing artist,
Right.
whether you're making music, like you have to have that somatic experience. And also I will say like not even to be like ableist about it, but no matter I used to work after that time in that hospital with people who were severely, I worked mostly in brain injuries. So like traumatic brain injury or like, losing the ability to do things. But like there's even a somatic experience of listening to music, and like I think that's to not become disembodied in all of this.
But do you think when you met with, say, these impotent guys in that meeting, was it because you weren't bringing hype and mania to them? Like, you
Ooh,
know,
that is such a great question. It's such a great question. And I hadn't reflected on that, but I do think that that hype and mania substitutes for actual like creative imagination, right?
Mm,
Like, and I think that to go back to like their impotence, like part of what I am really good at is helping draw things out of people, not because I'm telling them what to do, but like to get to be able to create the container where we can
hmm
draw it out, where they
hmm
like just there was like it was almost as if they couldn't respond because there was no mania to respond to. That
Yes.
reminds me of like the porn addiction and like that, we're like experiencing as a species where like the younger generation is having trouble with sexuality because they were, raised on what I would consider probably like hyper processed sexuality.
And you'd have to imagine, like, with the guys you were meeting with, the people you were meeting with, there might have been some women there, like, they've probably seen just a parade of people pitching through hype and mania.
Your email really shook me, Frederick, when it was like, this will resolve in 26, I think it was like 2068 or something like
Oh,
that.
yeah, Pluto finally leaving Aquarius and Pisces. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, oh my God, like we're in this like this long. Like what? And I know your email explained, but I don't know, maybe we could talk a little bit about like how you continue to create in these times or something like that, maybe as a way to end it.
Well, I think, well, first of all, the dates I was suggesting there, it's not like, okay, this moment right now is going to go on for like 60, because anything in a cycle is moving through phases and progressing and retrogressing. But the tenor of it is the note I was highlighting about Aquarius, Pisces within the circle, the cycle of the zodiac. Those two signs are like the accrued expression and wisdom and technology and all that of socio-cultural, socio-political life. It all kind of comes to this head in Aquarius and Pisces. And so, because Pluto, this great regenerative death star that's moving through stuff, it's gonna have to clean out all of that through Aquarius and Pisces to set a new chessboard up when it hits Aries. The thing I tell clients is you have to have, or I suggest that they have a good relationship or start to foster a relationship with, Kali and Shiva. And see, because especially in American culture, those two goddesses, they are kept out. No one wants to think of death, destruction, but here it is. We're in it. You turn on the TV, it's another fucking film about somebody's raped or there's a new war. God, that pissed me off when I saw the Oscars and that one battle after the other won. And I just thought, really? We have to celebrate more of this shit? Like, but that's very Pluto and Aquarius and Pisces.
And I think that death, I think that death energy is left out of the cycle always, right? Like even when you have a child, right? Like the old you dies for the mother to be born in you, like and
Yes.
we just ignore all of these constant cycles of death and that avoidance of death or like the real embrace of it is interesting also in the context of all the like longevity culture,
Oh,
right? Like
God.
the longevity culture is the worst.
Oh, those
It is so,
bros.
oh my God, it's so bad. And you're just like, I don't know. And then we hold them up again, like we're like, these people are geniuses. I'm like, I don't know. My grandma ate fried chicken, like did what people do and live to be 100, like I think there's other ways to get there besides like stepping in like a cold plunge and whatever, but it just is super fascinating to me. I'm like
Yeah.
I But the avoidance of death is super fascinating too in our culture, and like the mania and avoidance of death, and like it just dehumanizes us. It's
Well, and that's the thing about Aquarius and Pisces. Like I said, that is the sociocultural matrix, those two signs. So here's Pluto. It's just Pluto's like Glenn Close and Fatal Attraction. Dan, I'm not going to be denied. It's just like coming after him. Like, but the thing too is like it's not like a morbid fascination with death. It's just like make a little room for Shiva and get Kali in on this side because, honey, we're all going down that same round. So,
I think the like meditation on death, or however we want to say it, and it's not a fascination with it, but like it certainly makes you more present in your life. And when you're more present in your life, you actually don't want to do these toxic things like doom scroll.
that line of Freud's, like what you resist persists kind of thing, the
Yeah.
denial of death actually kind of creates necrophilic cultures that are, tacitly just like fascinated with death. And I see, I love
Mhm.
horror films and thrillers and all the, but my God, it's like you get on Netflix, it's like 9 out of 10 films are some death, gruesome, horrifying. And it's, Collie's like, I'm not going to be denied. But people need, like you're saying, to become conscious of it, consciously uh, connected with the reality of it. It's not even a discussion because it's where
Yeah.
the being alive, the other side of the equation is being dead. Tell folks, Holly, so people have been listening to us, what's the next step for them connecting with you? And like what might they expect or what should they do or
If they want to learn more, they can, my writing is at pyramid.work. So easy to remember. That's where you can find my Substack. And that's where I'm doing all of my writing now. Um, and if they're interested in learning more, they can also just reach out to me at holly@pyramid.work.
well, Holly, thank you
Yeah.
so much. I love connecting with you.
I love talking with you. I love, thinking about all of this in the context of the stars and the cosmos. And, thanks so much. Take care.
Bye bye.
Bye.